Hi there, welcome to iTWireTV. Today I'm joined by Appian co-founder and Chief Partner Officer, Marc Wilson. Thank you for joining me, Marc.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. I guess, Marc, to start with, I suppose, can you give me a bit of an overview about Appian's approach to AI and how it integrates with low-code development and process automation? Tell me the Appian story.
Sure. Thank you. Appian has been and continues to be one of the leaders in low-code process automation. We're very focused particularly on what we call end-to-end process automation. And to us, that means that there are a lot of different tools, feature sets, ongoing pieces of technology that make what customers need to get done much more effective, much more modernized, much more streamlined. And certainly we see the continued advance of artificial intelligence as part and parcel of that. In essence, we're trying to make sure that we can democratize access to AI technology within our platform. And I think that manifests itself in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, it's about making sure that developers can build robust, even complex applications as quickly as possible. And a lot of the advances that we've made by integrating AI into our platform are focused on this. Things like Appian's AI Copilot and Skill Developer that allows developers to really build their own algorithms off their own data sets as they're continuing to construct applications. That's been very powerful. We've added other things. For example, earlier this year at our user conference, Appian World, we demonstrated some examples of how we've been able to take generative AI and bring it into Appian to show how we can train a model to essentially construct an Appian form and an Appian process model. We think that this is really on the cutting edge of where a lot of organizations are going. We do, however, think that AI really needs to be enterprise ready. It's about making sure that it can be useful and productive, or as I like to say, operationalized. So certainly we're trying to make sure that it can help the developer. We're also trying to make sure that it can actually help the end user experience and what gets done. And from that perspective, it's about the feature sets that are one of the best examples for us for AI in use, where we see it in use today in lots of production environments, is around Appian's intelligent document processing, the ability to extract information from documents, whether they're invoices or even extract information from emails themselves, that allow very timely, very efficient work to happen without having humans getting involved in areas that they really don't need to get involved. We're making the human more productive in that cycle. And we think that's one of many different kinds of algorithms that we're going to see develop over time. But we're excited about those advances. And I think one thing is certainly true in this space: you never know what's going to come next. The next 6 months could certainly surprise you.
Yes, no, very true. That's an interesting example you give about the AI being able to interpret paper-based forms. Gosh, I know so many companies who have, stacks of paper-based forms for vehicle inspections or safety checklists. That's a really interesting example. I guess, do you have other examples maybe of how Appian's AI capabilities are helping organizations achieve improved efficiency and better outcomes in their processes?
Sure. Intelligent document processing has been one, I think, that's been around for several years. And to be clear, David, it's not just the physical paper and the scanning of paper. It's also the digital versions of that paper too. A lot of organizations have made that leap from paper to digitization, but in many respects, digitization has just been an electronic form of the paper they used to have that comes in 1,000 different flavors that doesn't necessarily lead to a lot of efficiency, and that kind of technology can really help. I think one of the areas where we see AI growing, that's an easy example because it's an area of a lot of inefficiencies. The next evolution that we're beginning to see in how artificial intelligence can be brought to bear on end-to-end process automation is the ability to bring algorithms into the processes themselves to allow decisions to be made based on the experience of the data sets of those organizations. So what do I mean by that? A process reaches a point in time, and based on the algorithms that have been created, they can offer where should you go next? Based on the history and the experience of the company, maybe the level of concern about a particular case incident, where should you go? In the past, a lot of these approaches were determined by what I would call rigid rule structures. If this, then that, and in a much more complicated fashion. Think, for example, if there's a potential credit card fraud. There's an assessment that says, well, let's check these 3 boxes, so we're definitely going to move it over into the evaluation stage, or no, we don't think it's the case. And I think we're increasingly seeing algorithms get beyond rigid rule structures to now be much more adaptive, to understand the history, where it's not a question of a checklist, it's a question of, a real data science world has looked at, data science has looked at something and developed something that gives the best scoring approach or the best approach to take it to the next step. So the integration of those kind of algorithms into end-to-end processes, we continue to see develop. And it's not just in fraud, it's in an innumerable number of examples.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Okay, and I guess just changing context slightly to low code development then. So how does Appian simplify the integration of AI technologies so developers with maybe limited AI expertise can incorporate all that awesome AI functionality you've just been talking about into their own applications?
Yeah. So one of the things that can be a problem in technology is that when new ideas come up, or new thoughts or new approaches, people tend to think of them as an end state. So someone says, oh, we're working with AI. What does that really mean? I mean, that means you're over here, you develop some algorithms, you have some data scientists, some folks that are good at math. They've created an algorithm. An algorithm by itself doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything. It's interesting, right? Because we did something that's new. Unless that algorithm can be operationalized into the way a business works, it's merely a science experiment. And one of the strengths that Appian has always shown with our low-code process automation approach has been the ability to take pieces of technology as features and make them operationalized into a process in an organization as quickly as possible. And again, it comes back to that notion that you reach a point in the process, the start of the process, the end of the process, or somewhere in the middle, and a decision needs to be made. There are many different paths that decision can go down. In our environment, you have choices. You could task a human. So we could say, David, here's the data. What do you think we should do? We could task a bot, leveraging our robotic process automation capability. And we could say, to this bot, your orders are to go do X, Y, Z. Or we can ask an algorithm. We can ask an AI service that's coming to be. Now, the good thing about that is that in none of those cases is the developer of the platform responsible for those 3 actors. You're tasking the human, well, you're giving the human what they need to know, and the human is providing feedback back to the process to move on. And similarly, the model is like that. We're not asking developers to become data scientists. We're merely leveraging the data science and the work that's been done and bringing it into the platform, being that orchestration layer for a lot of those decisions that happen. So I think that's particularly poignant when you think about some of the things that we've been able to help with, where we're now working with organizations who recognize that they are building more and more, and there's a lot more for them to do in the AI space, but they may not be ready yet. Rather than having to wait for their algorithms to be ready, they can build a process potentially where that decision today is made by the human, it's tasking a bot, but it might be waiting for the algorithm to come in. But when the algorithm's ready in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, it can merely be plugged in. It's easy to do that in the environment that we've created for developers, so that organizations don't have to wait. They can begin to already see the benefits of process automation.
Yeah, okay, no, that's very interesting. And I mean, I guess we've talked about developers and stuff. What about business users and ordinary folk? I guess with the increasing demand for intelligent automation, how does Appian empower those people, regular business users, to easily build and deploy AI-powered apps without having to rely on their IT teams or skilled developers as well?
Yeah, I think it's a question of making more people in an organization, as you said, empowered to affect change, empowered to add to applications. The most effective applications that we've seen constructed on Appian are never exclusively done by the IT team. They're never exclusively done by the business team. They generally are a collaboration. Our platform, because it's fueled by low code, is one in which it's very transparent and easy to see what is going on. You see a form being developed visually. You see a process being developed visually. And that power can be put into more of the hands of the business in the sense that they will be able to quickly understand how to be part of a team constructing an application. Sometimes that means organizations are leveraging advanced business users who can create applications themselves. More often than not, those business users become core members of teams that are creating applications. Now, one of the benefits of Appian, for example, is that we can take on both the simplest and easiest applications in an organization, as well as the most complex. And certainly as applications become more complex, it does generally require a collaboration between the business side and the IT side. But we're always about making it, very democratic, very visual. You can go in there, point, click, and configure your process, point, click, and configure your analytical report, point, click, and configure your form. And that is very empowering to exactly those users.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's wonderful. What about then, I guess, public versus private AI? Can Appian help organizations ensure that they're developing their apps in a secure and a private way as well? Is that something you offer?
Appian historically has been very focused on security. To us, it's never been something that's merely a checkbox. We've generally considered it a competitive advantage. Globally today, and as well here in Australia, we do work with many public sector agencies, financial institutions around the world. We're working with military, intelligence. We're working with pharmaceutical organizations, healthcare organizations that focus tremendous amounts of their effort on protecting the information that they're the stewards of, whether it's personal identifying information, health information, national security information. Very important to protect that. And how we've developed our applications and how we've supported them in the cloud or on-premise has been part and parcel of that. As we look at AI, we want to take that same mentality of security into that world. And we're seeing in the market today develop pretty distinctive approach to things. Most of the things that get a lot of the popular press attention, the chat GPTs, things like that, are very much public AI algorithms. Every time you or I go in there in our own personal context and decide that we'd like to, have a Shakespeare play done in the style of a Seinfeld episode, which is fascinating. It's amazing, actually, to see that work. All that information and that data is being fed into a public AI algorithm where it's grabbing as much information as it can from all around the world. That model, that approach, we don't think is going to be very palatable to most organizations, be they in the public sector or be they in the private sector. No bank wants to put its customer information into a public AI algorithm for fear it leak out, as well for fear that they don't want their data helping their competitor. And we're already starting to see the rise of private AI algorithms that are being fed a select set of data that has that level of security around it so that an organization knows that only its data is being populated into that to train that model. And we think that that's important to make sure that organizations are going to truly embrace the power of AI. Now, the way Appian makes sure that we go along with that is twofold. First, our ability to be as easy as possible to integrate with whatever an organization has developed, whether they want us to point us at a public AI algorithm or more appropriately at one of their own internal algorithms. And the second is with our own AI algorithms that we are shipping with the product, things like intelligent document processing, where we have the ability to have a private data set feeding that algorithm so that as an organization, you have the confidence to know that your data is not being lumped in with other organizations. You're just getting your view, your container, your closed view so that you don't have to worry about security. You don't have to worry about competitive information getting out. So that's very much part of our strategy around AI as well.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I guess that actually leads in, and I guess those things you mentioned about making sure you don't put your private data in public algorithms. I guess, are there any other challenges or limitations that organizations might face or should be aware of when they're implementing AI and process automation? And how does Appian help address those things?
I think that organizations need to ask good questions about where their data is going and how they're training their own algorithms. You know, sometimes it could be too broad, sometimes it could be too narrow. I think that there's in this early stages of AI, I think there continually need to be tests that they're running to sort of validate that they're getting the responses that they want. I mean, we've seen this with a lot of public examples. For example, I'll go back to ChatGPT, where you stick with the conversation long enough, weird things start to happen. And I think that vigilance continues to need to be around it. A very narrow scope with a narrow set of data for a narrow purpose is great, but it's also going to be very narrow. As you begin to become more ambitious with the models you're looking at, more ambitious with what you want to take on, continue to check on things to see whether things are following in the right way. To us, we consider this ultimately the circle that goes around continuous improvement. How are you looking at the efficacy and efficiency of your process? And yeah, there are other techniques and technologies that are going in there. You know, one of the things that we've now brought into our overall view around process automation is bringing in process mining capabilities to look at the processes themselves to see that they're following the right routes, to see where inefficiencies might be. Process mining gives you the ability to say, well, things went down this path 15% of the time, this path 30% of the time, this path X% of the time. But when it went down this path 50% of the time, maybe 90% of the time those were errors and it needed to go back. Well, investigations need to take place there. A lot of those investigations historically have been looking at inefficiencies in people, or inefficiencies in rule sets, or inefficiencies in sign-offs, generally manual, or maybe there's some bottlenecks in systems. But now you're going to have to incorporate your algorithms and your artificial intelligence into that assessment as well. Maybe our algorithms aren't operating at the level we want them to. And I think what it's going to highlight is the future necessity of really good data scientists. And I think that is people know it to some extent, but I think it continues to be a blind spot in the development in a lot of organizations. They're starting to recognize they need it. And I think that, even more so than programmers, is going to be the big job crunch of the next decade.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Okay, well, I guess actually you've said the crunch of the next decade. I was going to ask, looking to the future, what are some, I guess, what are the developments or advancements we might be able to expect in AI or low code or process automation that we could expect from Appian? What's on your roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, our vision is really completing that end-to-end model, and end-to-end ultimately, like I said, becomes the circle. You know, you're going to discover your processes, you're going to automate your process, you're going to optimize, and then you're going to go back through that loop. The additions that we've been making of late, obviously a lot of investment in AI, continued investment in our process mining capability, our robotic process automation capability, RPA capability to complement really our core strength in workflow process automation is where we're at. I will tell you, though, that one of the dominant themes of what we're doing today is really around how data interacts with what we've talked about as well. And for us, that's a terminology that we have a growing number of patents around that we call the Appian data fabric. And that is the ability to leave data where it lies, but treat it inside of a running application as if it were in the application itself. We think that one of the big problems of most platforms today, most applications that exist inside most organizations is that they depend or rely on core data to be resident in the data systems of that application. They were architected in a way that requires that. And it's antithetical, quite frankly, to the needs we see of organizations today and going forward, who through a decade or more of pre-application creation have created a fiefdom, a set of fiefdoms of data. The data doesn't exist in one place in an organization, it exists in 1,000 places in an organization. And the real efforts of the next decade are not going to be about how you digitize that last bit of paper. It's going to be how can you thread the needle and orchestrate applications that touch lots of different data sources and lots of different parts of a bigger journey, whether it's a customer journey, an employee journey, asset journey, whatever it might be. So we're now about automating overall the holistic, not just the individual. And that's that data fabric approach we have is going to be very much part of that. And I think a lot of the algorithms that we've talked about, the AI fronts that we've talked about, are going to be more holistic in nature, the overall journey, not the discrete, I have 5 people that were just trying to create something that, just does this. Well, just does this is one of 100 steps in the process, and it can't exist in a vacuum by itself. It's got to be brought into a larger effort that we're taking on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's been really insightful. I'm sold. I guess, Mark, if people want to take up Appian for their business, how do they get started?
So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. Here in Australia, we continue to see substantial growth, both in terms of Appian's presence on the ground. Our people in Australia continue to grow. A lot of new customers have come on, particularly over the last couple of years. So you can reach out to us, certainly on our website, our offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and growing from there. Presence now in Canberra as well, as we work directly with the Australian government. You can get started through an Appian trial. Go to our website and get started, sign up for a trial and take a look at what Appian can offer, take a class online about how Appian works and begin that way. We have an extensive partner ecosystem here in Australia as well, work with a lot of the larger organizations and increasingly a lot of small consultancies as well. You can reach out through our partners to get in touch with us too. So, we're viewing the Australian market and the Asia Pacific market in general as one of our fastest, if not our fastest growing market in 2023 and probably in 2024 as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, very exciting. Well, I appreciate that, Mark. That's been wonderful. I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to give Appian a trial myself.
Very good, David. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. So that's been Marc Wilson, Appian co-founder and Chief Partner Officer. Thank you, Mark. Take care.